The Phoenix Suns dominated the NBA bubble. There's no other way to put it. They went undefeated, led by their young star Devin Booker. But it was clear, while they were on fire, they still needed some help if they were really going to become title contenders. So this offseason, they decided to make a blockbuster trade for Chris Paul. Now at the time, there was a lot of excitement. Despite not being the youngest guy out there, Chris Paul had just led the Thunder to the playoffs, averaging 18 points and 7 assists, shooting 49% from the field and 37% from three. He was the perfect fit in Phoenix. They had brought in Ricky Rubio the season before to give them a much-needed primary ball handler and playmaker. Chris Paul brought that, but he was also bringing much more efficient, much higher volume offense and perimeter defense to the table. There was no reason to not be bullish on this team, as it already featured so much great depth. Now let's take a look back at that trade based on what we know right now. Currently, the Suns sit as the 7th seed in the Western Conference with a record of 8-7. While Chris Paul is bringing this team a lot of value, especially as a playmaker, right this second, he's struggling to score the ball. On the season so far, he's averaging 14 points a game, shooting less than 44% from the field and 28% from three. Now the question is, did the Suns get better from this trade? Well, let's look back at what they gave up. From the Oklahoma City Thunder, all they got was Paul, and they traded away Kelly Oubre Jr., Ricky Rubio, Ty Jerome, Jalen LeCoux, and a 2022 first-round pick. Ricky Rubio was pretty valuable to this team a year ago, especially since he finally shot the ball pretty well. But this season, that hasn't been the case. He's shooting just 35% from the field and 20% from three. In a pretty similar situation would be Kelly Oubre Jr. He was great for this team last season, but this year, it's been ugly, man. He's averaging 12 points, shooting 36% from the field and 22% from three, now on the Golden State Warriors. Ty Jerome and Jalen LeCoux were really just throw-ins. They're young guys with upside, but haven't proven enough to really go for anything across the league. This pick in 2022 is also protected top 12, but I'm not even sure if that really matters, because by the time someone is taken with this selection, I really don't expect the Suns to be a lottery team. Now, in terms of pure value, the Suns didn't really give up much. We really just have to decide if he is making this team better. Even based on what he's done to this point, he's helping this team, and that's only going to become more and more clear as time goes on. For this trade specifically, if we're going to cut guys like Kelly Oubre Jr. some slack for his start of the year scoring, we've got to do the same thing for Paul. With the breakout of Mikal Bridges, who I really think raises the ceiling of this team, I have really high expectations for what they're going to be able to do, and Paul is a huge part of that. Now, if we're going to grade this on everyone's beloved letter system, I'm going to give them a B. By no means do they regret this, but it's not like they got away with robbery. For the Thunder, I think it's an A. They didn't need what Chris Paul brought to the court. In fact, he was probably making them too good. And they're not going to get any more value elsewhere considering his contract. They were able to get a first-round pick and then got Kelly Oubre Jr., who they traded for an additional first-round pick. So this worked out great for them. Now, this Chris Paul deal wasn't the only big move we saw this offseason. Now, because of what was an overall weak free agency class, a lot of the big moves came via trade, and probably the biggest trade was Jrue Holiday going to the Milwaukee Bucks. This trade was so interesting with the risk involved. A huge part of that risk was because Giannis was yet to sign a contract extension. This was a move clearly made with the expectation that Giannis was sticking around, and they gave up a lot. They gave up Eric Bledsoe, George Hill, unprotected first-round picks in 2020, 2025, and 2027, and pick swaps in 2024 and 2026. Jrue Holiday was coming off a season where he averaged 19 points and 7 assists, shooting 49% from the field and 39% from three, while being one of the top perimeter defenders in the NBA. He's got a pretty similar skill set to Eric Bledsoe, but this is a team trying to win a title, and it's been very clear that the Bucks just can't count on Bledsoe in the playoffs. His playoff averages over the last 3 seasons are 13 points a game, shooting 41% from the field and 25% from three. The Bucks want to be more than just a regular season team. They needed to get a guy that could bring them more offense in the backcourt alongside Chris Middleton. Now, with that said, this is a very expensive Eric Bledsoe upgrade. So far, Jrue Holiday is averaging 16 points and 5 assists, shooting 49% from the field and 38% from three. I think that's right around expectations, so that's great. Now, on the other side of this, the players are playing well. Eric Bledsoe's having a career year shooting the ball, and George Hill's doing great in OKC, but the Bucks are not regretting this trade from a basketball standpoint. I think that's pretty obvious. The real question is whether or not they're going to regret giving away all these future draft picks for Jrue Holiday, who could potentially leave them next summer. At the time of the trade, there was a lot of unknown and concern. Without Giannis' signature on a contract, there's a scenario where him and Jrue just leave and they're in a rebuild without control of their draft picks. Since then, that's changed. Giannis inked a deal that's going to keep him around till at least 2025. This reduces the value of those draft picks. It also greatly increases the chances that Jrue Holiday will stick around. So without a doubt, this has become a much better trade since it happened, especially since Holiday is playing as expected. Now, I still have some concerns for this trade. If you guys follow me, you know I'm not the biggest fan of handing out unprotected picks 7 years down the line, but I'm still going to give it a B. The goal is to win a championship in this league, and it's not often you're able to get a player of Giannis's caliber, so you have to do whatever it takes to put the team in the best position possible while he's still in his prime, and that's what they did. Now, this is based on what we know right now. This one is subject to change. We don't know how Jrue Holiday will perform as the season goes on. When we last saw him in the playoffs, he was incredible, averaging 24 points on great efficiency. So there's a lot of reasons to be confident, but we just don't know. We also don't know if they're even going to be able to hold on to him, and it's near impossible to predict where these draft picks will end up falling. We mentioned OKC's involvement in the Chris Paul deal, but they were also involved in much more this summer. They traded 6th Man of the Year contender Dennis Schroder to the Los Angeles Lakers in exchange for Danny Green and the 28th pick in the 2020 draft. They sent Terrence Ferguson and newly acquired Danny Green to the 76ers in exchange for a 2025 first-round pick and Al Horford. They then traded away Steven Adams in a 4-team deal where they basically got back George Hill, a 2023 first-round pick, and 2 future seconds. They then traded away Ricky Rubio to the Minnesota Timberwolves and the 25th pick in the draft to New York, and in return, were able to get the 17th pick in the draft, who I'm not even going to try to pronounce his name, in a future second. With how busy the Thunder were this past summer, it'd be a little ridiculous to break down all the trades and give them individual grades, so we're just going to grade them all together, and the grade's going to be an A. This team is focused on bringing in as much draft capital as possible, and that's what they did. They added the 17th pick in the draft, 2 future firsts, and a bunch of seconds in this process. That's on top of the picks they were able to get out of the Chris Paul deal. This is one where the grade just really hasn't changed at all since the moves happened, because, well, for the Thunder, it just doesn't really matter how any of these players are performing, because they're actively just trying not to be good. The only reason their grade isn't higher is the price tag they gave up Schroder for. Now, on the other side of that Schroder deal, you got the Lakers. Schroder was coming off a season, the best season of his career, where he averaged 19 points a game, shooting 47% from the field and 39% from 3. This looked like an amazing addition for the Lakers at the time. They were fresh off an NBA title and had what appeared to be very limited offseason opportunities, but somehow were able to get Schroder, who was projected to finally give the Lakers a guy who could create for himself that wasn't named LeBron James or Anthony Davis. The best part of this trade is what they paid. Giving up just Danny Green, who wasn't meeting expectations, and a late first-round pick seemed like an absolute steal. Now, so far this season, they're not getting exactly what they hoped for from Schroder. He's averaging around 14 points a game on pretty poor efficiency, but I'm still giving them an A because of what they paid. He could go down with a season-ending injury right now, and the Lakers would probably still be title favorites. So with a very realistic possibility, he can get back to the production we've seen from him over the last couple seasons. For now, this is still a huge W for the Lakers. Lastly, we've got some more smaller trades that are still worth mentioning. The Blazers decided to go out and grab 3-and-D wing and part-time center Robert Covington from the Houston Rockets. They gave up Trevor Ariza, the 16th pick in the 2020 draft, and a heavily protected 2021 first. Now, the Rockets would end up trading away both the 16th pick and Trevor Ariza to the Pistons, and in return, got a future first-round pick. The sign and trade for Christian Wood would also be included in this deal about a week later. For the Rockets, it's worked out great, considering they would go on to trade James Harden, which is added to their pick pool and clearly put them in a much different situation going forward. But because this trade technically involved Christian Wood, they get an A+. Wood is one of the early favorites for the Most Improved award. He's averaging 24 points and 11 rebounds on amazing efficiency. On the other end of this deal, we've got the Blazers, who are getting a C-. When they made this trade, it looked great. But with Robert Covington starting the season, averaging less than 7 points, shooting 30% from the field and 28% from 3, despite the defense, he hasn't made this team better so far. Now again, this could all change, and that's why I'm not going to give them an F or anything like that. Another trade that didn't get much attention at the time, but was still pretty significant, was when the Dallas Mavericks would send Seth Curry to the 76ers in exchange for Josh Richardson and a second-round pick. The trade at the time seemed extremely fair. The 76ers were getting one of the best shooters in the league, and the Mavericks were able to get a younger, two-way wing that we've seen play well with higher volume than he was getting in Philly. With what we've seen so far this season, the 76ers have an A++ grade. We know this team has the defense. That was never a question. Getting a shooter like Curry, who's having a career year, could ultimately be huge for this team's championship hopes. He's averaging 16 points, shooting 50% from the field and 54% from 3. The Mavs get a D. They would love to have Curry shooting right now, and in the 8 games we've seen so far from Richardson, it hasn't been great. He's averaged 13 points, shooting 41% from the field and 32% from 3. On top of that, Josh Richardson has a player option after this season, while Curry has 2 more years on his deal, getting just $8 million a season.